David Oshiro, I think you gotta turn off your video.
Aloha, and welcome to the first evening of Dharmathon 2021. Our sponsor, the Buddhist Study Center, which is the educational organization of the Honpa Hongwanji Mission of Hawaii, presents noted national and international speakers for the benefit of its attendees yearly. This week, we will tap into a rich source of Dharma learning and ideas from our own Nembutsu Sangha. These Sanghas are made up of ministers and lay people within the state of Hawaii. Dharmathon 2021 is an opportunity to feature the ministers of the Honpa Hongwanji Mission of Hawaii. This week, 2 ministers each evening will be sharing their Dharma messages on the theme, Building Healthy Sanghas, Nurturing Empathy and Respect. It will be meaningful to hear the perspectives of ministers from across the state as they address this topic. If you have any questions for the minister, please type it in the chat box as they give their talk. After their half-hour talk, there will be a 15-minute question and answer period in which they will address your questions. Join us now and enjoy the presentation. My name is Lois Toyama, and I am a member of the Jikoen Hongwanji and the current president of the Hawaii Federation of Buddhist Women's Associations. And I will be your first moderator. I have the privilege of introducing our first speaker, Bishop Eric Matsumoto. Bishop Matsumoto, his Dharma name is Horaku, or Dharma Pleasure. He was born in Kona, Hawaii, and graduated from Konowaina High and Intermediate School in 1977. Bishop Matsumoto graduated from the University of Hawaii at Hilo with Bachelor of Arts degrees in History and Liberal Studies focusing on Japanese language and culture. He also graduated from Ryokoku University Graduate School with a master's degree in Shin Buddhist Studies in 1991. Since 1992, he has served at various temples, including Hawaii Betsuin, Honoka'a, Kamuela, Kohala, Pauwilo, and Mo'ili'ili Hongwanjis, and assumed the office of bishop in 2011. He has also been awarded many honors. He was the recipient of the Crown Prince Akihito Scholarship in the years 1984 to 85, and actually had an imperial audience with their majesties. He received the Outstanding Alumni Award for the University of Hawaii at Hilo in 2013. And he had the honor to help welcome Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu in 2012, Burmese leader Aung San Suu Kyi in 2013, and His Eminence Kojun Otani to Hawaii in 2017. Bishop Matsumoto is very involved in the community. He actively participates in interfaith and peace-related functions and events, including those addressing social issues and concerns by sharing Buddhist perspectives and representing the Buddhist community. And now, Bishop Matsumoto.
Thank you very much, Lois, and also to the Buddhist Study Center for hosting this week's Dharmathon. I'd like to wish aloha kako and good evening to one and all. This evening, being the first speaker of a series of speakers contemplating the Honpa Hongwanji Mission of Hawaii theme and slogan for 2021, building healthy sanghas, nurturing empathy and respect. I'd like to share or highlight the foundation from which a healthy sangha and how ultimately empathy and respect is nurtured from the Jodo Shinshu perspective. Our Hawaii Kyodan theme and slogan is very timely, I think, as we reflect on the situation of our world and nation with the pandemic, racial discrimination, the political divide, skirmishes around the world, like in Afghanistan, and even the global climatic changes that are occurring. It is more evident than ever that what our world really needs, including earth, nature, it is more empathy and respect. I recall an interesting statement made by Reverend Masao Haneda, which I read in a book a while back. He said, quote, "We are looking at becoming another example of the workings of true compassion," end quote. He contrasts between role models and being an example. He boldly says that, quote, "Even Shinran is not a model to follow, but only another example of how Amida in his compassion does not leave a single person out of that compassion," end quote. Let us, the Sangha, clergy and lay, jointly together share our awareness, understanding, joy, and appreciation of the Buddha Dharma by being that example, that Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion is indeed true and real and working in this world. One of the easiest ways which we can identify Amida Buddha's working, to me, is by looking at the life of a person of Nembutsu. Yes, it is true, as Shinran Shonin said, quote, "My eyes being hindered by blind passions, I cannot perceive the light that grasps me," end quote. However, just because we cannot see this light does not mean it does not exist. I am right now recalling to mind what Monsieur Emeritus Koshin Otani said once, quote, "Someone once gave a sermon where they pointed out that you cannot see the wind, but you can see it rustling the leaves of a tree or hear the tinkling of a wind chime. Based on the existence of these observable things, we know that there is wind. Likewise, we know of the power of Amida Buddha's other power from its presence in the lives of people it has transformed," end quote. In many people's eyes, generally speaking, Pure Land Buddhism, including our own Shin Buddhism, is seen as being heavily otherworldly, with a lot of emphasis on being placed on the moment of death or after death. To be sure, attaining birth in the Pure Land at the end of this finite life is a very important aspect of Jodo Shinshu with monumental significance. However, not everything is postponed to the so-called afterlife. For example, a significant point elucidated by Shinran Shonin is the fact that even this spiritual foolish being, or Bombu, is able to attain the state of non-retrogression from attaining enlightenment in the here and now, in this moment, the present, with the receiving of the endowed mind of true and trusting from Amida Buddha, Shinjin. This is in contrast to previously, when there was no guarantee until a person actually could see the Buddha coming to welcome them at the time of death, and the reason why deathbed rites were considered so important. However, with Shinran Shonin's classification of the true Pure Land teachings, we come to realize that with Shinjin, or the endowed mind of true and trusting, we are already assured of enlightenment, and thus one experiences such joy and happiness, along with unending gratitude, even in this samsaric life. Jodo Shinshu brings much hope, optimism, and courage to live the present samsaric life, while also being very realistic about my predicament as a Bombu or foolish being. I am not perfect. I am limited. But there is something positive and affirmative also happening, and this is due to Amida Buddha, the other power, the power of compassion. As part of my studies of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, I looked closely at the 48 vows of the Bodhisattva Dhammakara, Amida Buddha. Most of the vows speak about the Pure Land, describe the Bodhisattvas that are in the Pure Land and their great virtues, or are related to Amida Buddha, and of course, how we're able to attain birth in the Pure Land. I noticed that there are 5 vows which contain the word sentient beings, as opposed to bodhisattvas, which intrigued me greatly. 3 of the 5 vows are the 18th, 19th, and 20th vows, which address how we're able to attain birth in the Pure Land, with the 18th vow being the primal, or so-called king of the vows, and the most significant. Again, as I mentioned, most of the other vows are talking about others like the Buddha or bodhisattvas who are already born in the Pure Land. But the remaining other two vows, namely the 33rd and 34th, is not talking about others or entirely about some futuristic point in time, but about me, sentient beings, and also the present. The 34th vow speaks about attaining the insight into the non-origination of all existence, which is kind of hard to understand. But very simply put, the insight leads to the understanding that everything and everyone is equal and precious, and that it fosters overcoming dichotomy. Although as a Bombu, or spiritually foolish being, this is just a partial understanding of it and not the total manifestation of it, which comes much later with birth in the Pure Land. However, it was with the 33rd vow in particular that caught my attention. The 33rd vow reads, when I attain Buddhahood, sentient beings throughout the countless and inconceivable Buddha worlds in the 10 quarters, having received my light and having been touched by it, will become soft and gentle in body and mind, surpassing humans and devas in those qualities. Should it not be so, may I not attain perfect enlightenment. The phrasing of the vow is rather wordy, and so let's take out some of the words. Simply, the 33rd vow is saying, sentient beings, having received my light, having been touched by it, will become soft and gentle in body and mind. I thought to myself, something is happening here. It is saying that when we receive Amida Buddha's light, something happens to us. So what is the so-called light of Amida Buddha? In his famous Shoshin Nembutsuge, or hymn in true and trusting in the Nembutsu, commonly known as the Shoshinge, Shinran Shonin writes about Amida Buddha. Everywhere the Buddha casts light, immeasurable, boundless, unhindered, unequaled light, Lord of all brilliance, pure light, joyful light, light of wisdom, light constant, inconceivable, light beyond speaking, light surpassing the sun and the moon, is set forth illuminating countless worlds. The multitudes of beings all receive this radiance. According to the glossary of Shin Buddhist terms found in the collected works of Shinran, Volume 2, there is a definition of what is the Buddha's light, and it explains. Shinran does not teach an objective being called Buddha who emits rays of light, or an objective realm called Pure Land that shines forth with light. Light, or wisdom, and in extension, compassion, is the very reality of Buddha and Pure Land. Thus, Shinran praises the wondrous workings of light. In the actual life of persons of Shinjin, this means that a power conceived as light penetrates and melts the hard crust of their blind passions, hardened through aeons of aimless wandering, and nourishes a new being and a new life. End quote. The light of Amida Buddha is not a light that most of us can see with our eyes, but it is something that can be known by our hearts and minds and its effect on people, as the analogy about the wind His Eminence Koshin Otani, Monsieur Emeritus, shared earlier. The point that I would like to make and highlight tonight is the nurturing aspect of Amida Buddha's light, which we are receiving. In addition to being illuminated and embraced, we're also being nurtured by the light of the Buddha. Recently, my eyes rested on a message by His Eminence Monshu Kojun Otani, in which he said, quote, Shinran Shonin is the person who shows us how we can live our lives despite our egocentric tendencies. Although we might not be able to completely eradicate our blind passions, within the embracing light of Amida Buddha, we can live each moment of our lives with true meaning. Rather than simply live day in and day out as if we are just going through the motions. In the teachings illuminating light, we can find clarity and meaning in our lives. Not separating ourselves from society, it is important that we live within the priceless interconnections that we have with one another and support each other. Gomonshu Kojun Otani has been emphasizing or focusing on how we live as Nembutsu followers. Yes, I, Eric, am perfectly imperfect, as someone once said, and negative impulses and self-centered thoughts do not disappear until birth in the Pure Land at the end of this finite life. But there is something happening right now in the here and now in daily life. A testimony to this fact is Chinnan Shoning's own words in one of his letters, in which he said, quote, "There was a time for each of you when you knew nothing of Amida's vow and did not say the name of Amida Buddha, but now guided by the compassionate means of Shakyamuni and Amida, you have begun to hear the vow. Formerly, you were drunk with the wine of ignorance and had a liking only for the three poisons of greed, anger, and folly. But since you have begun to hear the Buddha's vow, you have gradually awakened from the drunkenness of ignorance, gradually rejected the three poisons, and come to prefer at all times the medicine of Amida Buddha." End quote. In all of Buddhism, the goal is not to be a cause, condition, and nor result of ignorance and suffering, and realize true liberation or freedom, which is variously named or called passing into nirvana, the attainment of enlightenment, or as we would say in Jodo Shinshu, attaining birth in the Pure Land. In Shin Buddhism, we fully acknowledge my limitations, including the fact that I am many times, directly or indirectly, totally or partially, a cause and or condition of others and or my own suffering. However, even such a limited person like myself in this imperfect world can certainly try to live according to the ideals of Buddhism, and I would argue, nurtured by the Buddha with the guidance of the Dharma. There is absolutely no doubt in the dynamics of Shin Buddhism that the source of anything positive or good is Amida Buddha, the motivation, the inspiration, the guidance, the transformations that come about come from the Buddha Dharma. The specifics and the details on how things unfold depends on the karmic circumstances of our world, times, and our lives. But imagine, if you will, finding yourself in a completely dark room. You can't see anything, including yourself. You're confused, scared, anxious, maybe even full of fear, because you have no idea where to go or what to do, as you cannot see anything. You may want to get out of the darkness and uncertainty. Then there appears a small sliver of light. The light enters the room, bringing some brightness into it. However, it does not lighten or brighten the whole room all at once. However, there is enough light that you can see where the light is coming from, and it enables you to head in that direction towards the light. The light guides you. You still might stumble because it is still semi-dark. However, there is enough light that it also shines upon you, and you can partially see yourself too. Later, when you arrive closer to the source of the light, like when you draw the curtains to a dark room, the light floods in, and for the first time, you're completely enveloped in that light and see everything perfectly clear. Do you see my or our scenario as a foolish being and what transpires? In the larger Sukhavati Ruha Sutra, our main sutra, it shares, quote, "Sentient beings who encounter this light have the three defilements swept away, and they become soft and gentle in body and mind. They dance with joy, and the good mind arises in them. When those suffering, pain, and travail in the three evil courses see this light, they all find respite and are freed of afflictions. After their lives have ended, they all gain emancipation." The key phrases in this passage are, "see this light," and "find respite and are freed of afflictions." The Chinese character ideogram for see also has the meaning of to meet, to encounter. The see here is not the normal visually see with our eyes, but refers to encountering or receiving the Buddha's light. We can liken it perhaps maybe to X-rays. We can't see X-rays with our naked eyes, but it is real and it does have a function and an effect. We are being illuminated, nurtured, and embraced by Amida Buddha's 12 lights. I don't have the time today to go explain all 12 lights of Amida Buddha, but the main point I would like for you to take away from my message tonight is that the lights of the Buddha are not only mere descriptions of the Buddha, but many of these lights have a role or a function and an effect on us. I think all of you probably remember Aesop's fable of the North Wind and the Sun. It's a story about the North Wind and the Sun who were quarreling about who is stronger. The North Wind insisted that it was stronger because it could cause the clouds to block out the sun's light. As they were insisting on their own strength, a man was seen below. The Sun proposed that to determine who is stronger, they should have a contest. In a modern-day rendition, the one who could make the man take off his coat would be declared the stronger of the two. The North Wind agreed. The North Wind blew with all its might, hoping to blow off the man's coat. However, contrary to expectation, the man only grabbed onto his coat and held it even more tightly as the North Wind tried to force the man to take off its coat. Now it was the Sun's turn. The Sun came out from behind the clouds and warmly shed sunlight upon the man. Feeling warm, the man took off his coat. Needless to say, the Sun won the contest. In a similar way, like the Sun in the fable, Amida Buddha, through his light, works through gentle persuasion and encouragement, and not coercion or force or fear or punishment. Just as regular light, including sunlight, enables us to see objects, so too the Buddha's light has a role or function. In other words, when the Buddha's light shines upon us, something happens. It's just like the sunlight, in that not only does the sunlight enable us to see, but we also feel the warmth of the sun. We feel the warmth of the sun, which feels good and affects our actions. Like the sun, which casts its warm sunlight on the traveler and made him take off his extra layer of clothing. In a similar way, Amida Buddha, through gentle persuasion and encouragement, not force or fear of punishment, moves us forward, even if ever so slightly. Just as the sun was able to make the man take off his coat, Amida Buddha makes a difference by tempering our bonno or blind passions. Our bonno or blind passions do not disappear, as like the north wind, it will continue to blow for the rest of our life. But we will be able to take off perhaps a thin layer of clothing or two, find respite, as the larger sutra says, because of the Buddha's warm, compassionate light shining on us right now. However, what I do need to make clear is that I do not become a perfect human being or a Buddha. I have not eliminated or destroyed all of my blind passions of anger, greed, and ignorance. It is only at the end of life, with birth in the Pure Land, that all negativity permanently comes to an end. This truth is expressed in the quote by the last line, which says, quote, "After their lives have ended, they all gained emancipation," end quote. The final and complete liberation occurs at the end of my finite life with birth in Amida Buddha's Pure Land, the land of immeasurable light. Shinran Shonin talks about Amida Buddha's light in a writing called The Virtue of the Name of Amida Tathagata. My understanding is that the Buddha's light of purity addresses our greed. The Buddha's light of joy addresses our anger. The Buddha's light of wisdom addresses our ignorance. Because of Amida Buddha's great light of wisdom illuminating my mind, I come to see and understand the Bombu, spiritually foolish being that I am, and also that Amida Buddha's great compassion embraces me, and that we are inseparable. I don't become a perfect human being, but there arises in me a deep lament about my imperfect self, and there is an aspiration to be better. I become more aware of the negative qualities and actions which end up hurting myself and others. Also, one realizes that many times other people are the same in their self-centeredness And so instead of being only upset at others and demand that others change, a sense of understanding develops with an aspiration that our life and world would be a little more peaceful and harmonious, and that I should try to somehow contribute towards that end, and that it starts with me. By the gentle, humble, and sincere life of Nembutsu followers, filled with generosity, joy, and reflection, we can see the workings of Amida Buddha's lights of purity, joy, and wisdom, which are 3 of the 12 lights. Thus, I believe the late Jodo Shinshu scholar, Reverend Jitsuen Kakiyashi, in his book, was able to say the following. The turning of the heart means forsaking the human-centered way of thinking and placing the teachings of the Tathagata at the center of our thought. Being saved means that with Dharma-centered values, a new view of life is established within ourselves. Grounded on a sense of gratitude and shame, they, persons of Nembutsu that is, begin to live a new life, refraining from committing selfish deeds and trying to respond to the Tathagata's great compassion. Now, the question is, how can we promote and make manifest empathy and respect in our Sangha and larger community? The key to me is awareness. How do we become more aware? We need to listen to the teachings, or at least this perspective. Herein lies the importance and significance of mompo, or listening to the teachings. I like the word ochomon, or what I refer to as transformative hearing and listening. Let me attempt to express the depth and significance of this transformative hearing listening. Is expressed by the word chomon in Jodo Shinshu by examining or having us look at the Chinese ideograms for it. The word cho is made up of 3 parts. The extreme left has the character for ear in green. The upper right part has the character for to heal or to correct in orange. And the lower right has the character for heart and mind in purple. And so in essence, what happens when one truly hears or listens is there is a healing or a changing of the heart. Now, the second character, mon, means to hear. It is comprised of 2 Chinese characters. One, which means gate in blue, and again, ear in green. In our case, it expresses our coming to the temple to listen to the Dharma. What happens when we bring our ears to the temple gate? We hear sounds, we hear voices, we hear the calling voice of Amida Buddha. But this is the crucial part. The nuance of this character is that we hear a sound or voice that is not our own, but that is coming from another source. And in our case, it is Amida Buddha or the Dharma. And interestingly, this character Mong further has the meaning of to understand. So we don't only hear sounds, but we also understand. This is faith in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. It is not only hearing sounds or words, but a transformation of the heart occurs. In this way, when we truly hear, really listen to the call of Amida Buddha or Namo Amida Butsu, our life is transformed. To diverge a bit, however, I believe we can apply this concept of deep listening to even non-religious matters, secular matters. Do we hear the cry of nature, Mother Earth? Do we hear the cry of those suffering from the lack of basics like adequate food and water, clothes and housing? I know it is a complex matter which requires much thought and many things to be taken into account. But do we hear the cry of our healthcare professionals, and especially hospitals in this critical time of the pandemic? Do we hear all of the above? Despite the unfortunate recent surge in COVID cases due to the Delta variant, have we ever thought, generally speaking, why is it that in Hawaii, it seems that more people are willing to wear masks and follow safety measures? Again, the issue of vaccinations may be a complex, but I still wish I could say that it was the same for vaccinations. For me, the answer is that generally speaking, we're more conscious of each other. We see the various ethnic and cultural groups which comprise our community in Hawaii. To be sure, I have my own thoughts and what I personally want to do, but consideration for or of others is also a large part of our island psychology. So then, how does this respect come about? To me, the Buddhist answer is through awareness. We're all part of this diverse fabric called Hawaii, and this acknowledgement or recognition is important and impactful. Many other religions many times tell us what to believe. They also many times tell us what to do. However, Buddhism is a little different. Buddhism is about awareness, understanding, and responsibility. We understand how we are interrelated and interconnected, that we make a difference in each other's life. It is this attitude or perspective that makes the difference, and in a more natural way, I feel, influences our actions and behaviors. I think it is much easier for us in Hawaii to think about our actions and consequences of our actions in relationship to others, due to the fact that we have many spiritual and cultural traditions which emphasize respect, harmony, and caring for each other, and amongst them is our Buddhist religion. Even in Jodo Shinshu, we are being encouraged and nurtured by Amida Buddha to try to live positively. On one hand, Jodo Shinshu does talk a lot about our human frailties, again, as a spiritual foolish being. But, in a way that left to my own devices, I might easily go down a road that is very negative and with dire consequences, which end up hurting others and myself because of my judgmental, self-centered mind, as expressed in the manga or comic Shoshinge Saga. The unconditional compassion that Amida Buddha is, Amida Buddha does not require us to rid ourselves of negative qualities before accepting us, and accepts us just as we are, full of imperfections. However, this does not mean that it's okay to wantonly contribute to suffering or live selfishly and self-centeredly with only oneself in mind. The all-compassionate Amida realizes that we, Bombu, are trapped, snared, and chained by our blind passions, Bonno, and has compassion for us, thus offering salvation without any strings. At the moment of attaining Shinjin, out of lament of such a shameful self, and in grateful response for unconditional compassion, in the person of Nembutsu arises an aspiration to cast out evil in themselves, as Shinran Shonin mentions in one of his letters. As a note, evil in Buddhism includes what we might morally think of as evil, as in a crime or unlawful action, but it is more so referring to that which causes suffering, such as ignorance, greed, anger, including negative qualities like self-centeredness and arrogance, and the unwholesome behaviors that these negative qualities cause us to do. Shinran Shonin is known to have said, in people who have long heard the Buddha's name and said the Nembutsu, surely there are signs of rejecting the evil of this world and signs of their desire to cast out evil in themselves. This signs of rejecting the world does not mean that we turn our backs to the world and do nothing and escape to the Pure Land, but rather, even if imperfect, we try to have empathy and respect for others and the world, realizing that full liberation comes later. We are rejecting the evil, the imperfections, the negativity, not people or society. We feel connected to others, and this is due to the fact that Amida Buddha has connected with us. We are responding in gratitude to Amida Buddha. Since the beginning of my term as bishop, I have been emphasizing that the life of a Shin Buddhist is one of responding in gratitude to the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. In which we continually recite the Nembutsu in gratitude and try to live our life guided by the Dharma, as it is one of the 10 benefits we receive in this present life. Yes, even our responding in gratitude is the workings of Amida Buddha. To be sure, it is I who is responding in gratitude, but I am also being nurtured by the light of Amida Buddha. In this way, thanks to the working of other power we find respite in that we begin to slowly live in a new awareness which has been nurtured in us. We come to know our blind passions for what they are and see that we should not live blinded by them. But now, and we live in a new awareness, which includes the awareness of an illuminating, caring, nurturing presence known as Amida Buddha, whose ultimate promise is that at the end of our life, we are assured of emancipation as we attain enlightenment with birth in the Pure Land. But even in the here and now, encouraging us to live with mutual respect and empathy, and amicably with gentleness as promised in the 33rd vow. Even Benya Shoni, our 8th spiritual leader, said that in one of his memoir, in his memoir, he said, even if we cannot do good to the full, let us strive to do what we can for the world and for the Buddha Dharma, end quote. Let us as individuals, but also collectively as the Hongwanji Sangha, respond in gratitude to Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion. What is very important is for each of us to recite the Nembutsu again in awareness, joy, and gratitude, and try to live guided by the Dharma. Imperfect and incomplete as it may be, it is our humble, grateful, respectful, warm, and harmonious relationships and interactions with others, including our natural environment, through which we can foster empathy and respect in the world. We can nurture empathy and respect in our community, the world, by sharing this message of mutual respect and empathy, but most importantly, by trying to live a Dharma-enriched life, again, nurtured by the Buddha Dharma. I'd like to conclude my presentation tonight by sharing Hawaii's version of His Eminence Kojun Otani's Our Pledge. If you wish, please join me to recite it. Our pledge. Reaching out to others, I will share a smile and gentle words, just like the Buddha who always calls out with aloha. Breaking away from my greed, anger, and ignorance, I will try to live in peace and harmony, just like the Buddha who shares tranquility and kindness with all. Moving forward from self-centeredness, I will share a life of joy and sorrow with others, just like the Buddha whose caring heart always embraces us. Realizing that I live because of others, I will strive to live life to the fullest with an attitude of gratitude, just like the Buddha who promises to embrace us all. Thank you, and Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida. Namo.
Thank you, Bishop Matsumoto. Now we have one question, but if you do have questions, please type them in the chat and then Carrie will get them to me and I can direct them to the bishop. But the first question is, does the work of Amida's light upon us include for us as imperfect beings to relieve the suffering of others?
To me, what happens is that we do feel a connection or affinity with others. Again, because the Buddha has connected with us, we feel connected to the Buddha. I believe this, we then begin to come to understand and know that, we're all, again, interrelated and interconnected, and we're not, as separate as, we thought we may have been earlier. And this, I believe, yes, fosters, I think, this kind of helping others and so forth. That, again, we see that bond or connection that we have with others.
Okay, thank you. And another kind of a follow-up question. Did Shinran set parameters around the kind of actions we can take to relieve the suffering of others?
Parameters, if you're referring to like limitations or maybe what we shouldn't do, of course it will be things like using force or violence, things of that nature. But the specifics of how things unfold, I think, is not set by Amida per se, and it more depends more on, what is happening in our world, what the circumstances of our times and the conditions, that we're living in right now, and that's how in those interactions or how we become involved with them will kind of determine how, I guess, like empathy and respect and so forth, specifically unfold. But I think this is the case many times in Buddhism, is that it doesn't give us the specifics. It gives us the generalities, perhaps, or the direction, or the broader picture, so to speak. But actually, how things unfold, or again, the specific actions will, become apparent, depending on our own sort of karmic conditions and, what's happening in our world at any given time. And that's, I think, for me, is sort of the guidance that Buddhism provides for us, which, again, includes a bit of freedom, perhaps, on how we will express, like empathy and respect.
And there's I guess this is I don't know if this is the same question. How do we determine what actions we can take to relieve the suffering of others?
That's a very good question, and a very difficult question. Being limited and imperfect, I don't know all the facts or all the details, and and if we wait, if I was as wise as the Buddha, perhaps, I could make the right choice, that's going to be good for everyone. But I'm not enlightened, and so I can't, know everything, right? And so forth. And so I think what happens is we need to just do the best we can, of course, being guided by, in our case, as Buddhist, the Dharma, and hopefully, move in that direction, or try to do things that the Dharma does share with us, and that, it will bring about a positive result. Of course, again, because I'm limited and imperfect, we never know for sure, and at any given point, another different condition or something, might steer things in a different direction. And then we'll have to kind of move again in another direction to, do something else. And so there's never a perfect moment. And I think a moment that, we can be guaranteed that, what we did will be all good, all positive. But again, with the Dharma and the Buddha, as our guide, and, with the Buddha in mind, I think, we can kind of move in the general so-called right direction. Yeah.
Okay, if anybody has more questions, please put them in the chat, but maybe I'm going to use it. Can I use this opportunity to get some personal counseling from you, Bishop? I want to know, I know you talked about Amida's light and would make us softer and more open, but how do we not go down that negative road? I'm so upset about people that won't get vaccinated or wear masks, and it's just, so I know I'm being judgmental and arrogant and self-centered, but I can't seem to let go of that. And what are some ways that I could maybe deal with that to be more empathetic and more helpful to people than just mad?
Yes, I think I think it's, yeah, because this is something, the pandemic and what's happening, hits all of us very close to home. Yeah, I think it's very natural that we do have intense emotions, or feelings and so forth that arise in us and so forth. And but at the same time, though, if we could take a moment to perhaps, try to think of why certain individuals might be, what, not for vaccinations and so forth, and all, and try to maybe think of ways perhaps in which we might be able to persuade them again to, consider vaccinations. Yeah, I think right now there is for a portion of the population, so much of it seems to be from the misunderstanding, right, or misinformation, and so forth. It seems, and so maybe we could channel our energies, in trying to get information or the facts about vaccinations and things like that to out into the public, so to speak, so that it seems, I think, I do too, but I think we all kind of have our set channels, perhaps, of listening news or getting information and so forth. And if you're only listening to one, you're only going to get one viewpoint or perspective, right? And so I think it's important for us to again, like the Buddhism, it's not through force or coercion, but through persuasion and trying to get the so-called right, if I may use that word, perspective, non misinformation, so that more people can come to realize that it is safe for most people to get vaccinations and things like that. Yeah, and so to kind of channel our efforts, perhaps our energies in that direction.
Thank you. I think that helps me put my focus in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have more questions. In rejecting the evil of the world, do we simply do it personally, internally, or do you think it includes the evil of others?
I believe it's when we talk about evil, in a very general sense, it could perhaps include others, in a sense that when you read Shinran's writings and things like that, right? He talks, he has phrases like, reject the evil of the world, and so it sounds like it's the whole world, so to speak. Yeah, but in Shin Buddhism, it's more a realization about myself. Yeah, instead of talking about the evils of someone else, it's more seeing that negativity in oneself and whatnot, and lamenting that and so forth, and due to that lament and gratitude, to Amida Buddha for accepting me, this imperfect self, and so forth, then we try to see what we might be able to, bring about a change or do something positive and so forth, which will then also perhaps help others, or to begin to see things differently or change the world. Yeah, but it's not about introducing evil, seeing evil in others. It's not about pointing a finger at someone else. Yeah, it's about me being the bombu, or the one filled with blind passions.
There's a related question to that. It's, do we reject the evil of others, or is it none of our business?
I would say it's none of our business, in a sense, because we're all interrelated and interconnected. But again, it's how I think you or I would approach, that so-called evil. Yeah, I think, it's how would we be able to bring about a change, perhaps, yeah, in that negative behavior or action. I think is where is important for us to consider, yeah, and whatnot, instead of just rejecting it and saying this not has nothing to do with me, and so forth. A basic Buddhist teaching is that everything is and everyone is interrelated and interconnected, and so if we turn our back on someone, we're turning our back on ourselves, so to speak, as well, right? And so in that sense, yeah, we don't abandon the world or escape to the Pure Land, because everything's so bad here. But I believe the Buddha, encourages us, and the Dharma, is trying to guide us in a certain direction that hopefully will be beneficial to one and all. It's difficult, it's challenging, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. It's very challenging. It's very difficult to try to live the Dharma in a world of samsara.
Thank you. Does anyone else have more questions? It's your last chance. If not, thank you so much, Bishop Matsumoto, for opening this first time event. And I think we are off to a good start.
Yeah.
Right now, there'll be a break, and so it's about a 10-minute break now. So 7:35, Dennis Tashiro will be on to introduce our next speaker, who is Reverend Kaufman from Kauai. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lois, for moderating, and thank you to the BSC staff and volunteers.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the second half of today's Dharmathon 2021 session. My name is Dennis Tashiro from Wynwood Buddhist Temple. We will now hear from Reverend Arthur J. Kaufman. Reverend Kaufman also uses the name Shaku, Arthur J. Kaufman. Shaku is taken from his Buddhist name, Shaku Sho-ju. Reverend Kaufman is presently resident minister at the Lihue Hongwanji mission on the island of Kauai. He was ordained in 1994 and received his teaching certification in 2007. He is a veteran of 8 years of military service in the United States Air Force, with one tour of Van Rang Air Base, Vietnam in 1966. He is a graduate of William Howard Taft High School and has an associate degree in art from Kapilani Community College. He is married to Dr. Judith Holland. He has served as minister at Moili Hongwanji Mission, at Honpa Hongwanji Hilo Betsoeng, and at Aya Hongwanji Mission. If you have any questions for Reverend Kaufman during his message, please type it in your YouTube chat box. Reverend Kaufman will answer the questions after his message. Now, here is Reverend Kaufman. He is married to Dr. Judith Holland. He has served as minister in Church.
I apologize for that, everyone. We'll restart the video. I realized there was no audio.
Aloha kako. This is Shaku Arthur J. Kaufman, resident minister of the Lihue Hongwanji Mission of Hawaii on the island of Kauai. The subject of my talk tonight will be the theme and slogan for the year 2021, Building Healthy Sanghas, Nurturing Empathy and Respect. I do not know if there has ever been a time in history when nurturing empathy and respect was more important, except possibly at the last pandemic, which happened back in 1906. I wasn't around for that one. Our society has once again been shaken by the systematic racism towards African American citizens and other people of color over the past 400 years. Stark divisions have appeared in both political and social systems, and the relationships with the authority figures and the people they're supposed to be serving have been badly strained. Add to this point the coming of the pandemic, which has shaken the world and which has taken over 600,000 American lives. Never in my life would I have believed to even imagine such a loss happening in this country. The theme of building healthy sanghas has somewhat been eclipsed by the thought of keeping the sangha healthy. One being a religious concern, while the other a physical concern. A healthy Sangha is a religious concern, is a group of people who have rooted themselves in the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, and, like ourselves, Shinran Shonin's perspective on the Pure Land teachings. Encircling this, the unconditional, unconceivable wisdom compassion of Amida Buddha that embraces us, even if it is beyond our understanding. The health of the Sangha is a natural concern. But these days, it is not just the Shinshu Sangha whom we must. But these days, it's not just the Shinshu Sangha, but concern for all those outside the Sangha, our friends and neighbors. As a natural reflection of the compassion which embraces us, the Shinshu Sangha has responded by making masks to help protect the first responders and our elders, ourselves, and each other. We had food drives and other activities to help support our community during this difficult time. The temples of the Shinshu Sangha have had to forego their annual food raises that help to sustain the temples in favor of preventing the spreading of the virus to the greater community. This pandemic has put obstacles in the Sangha's path, and yet, almost without us skipping a beat, the Sangha has responded with the use of technology to conduct and transmit our teachings to those at home and conduct the businesses of the temple. A healthy Sangha is all these things and so much more. As you know, there are many difficult practices in the different schools of Buddhism that lead to the alleviation of suffering. One of them is the perfection of the Eightfold Noble Path: right understanding, right purpose, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right endeavor, right thoughts, and right meditation. These practices are based on self-power and are to be accomplished by the devotee. These were just some of the basic practices during Shakyamuni Buddha's lifetime, and were and are practiced diligently by monks and nuns to this day. Although it might have been possible in Buddha's day to achieve this perfection and achieve enlightenment, today, far into the last Dharma age, it seems almost an impossibility. Nurturing empathy and respect lets us become aware of the noble truth of suffering to all people, everywhere. Our Jodo Shinshu teachings are a pathway to peace, harmony, and the life of awakening to gratitude, and ultimately enlightenment. When all else fails, there is an Nembutsu. There is the name of Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Butsu. Empathy, simply defined, means being able to put oneself in another's situation. It goes beyond sympathy. It is an attempt to relate to another situation and to help in whatever way we can. There is a long tradition of empathy in Buddhism, starting with the reality of Buddha or awakening. In the BDK's publication Teaching of the Buddha, in the chapter on the eternal and glorified Buddha, chapter 1 states, and I quote, "The spirit of Buddha is that of great loving kindness and compassion. The great loving kindness is a spirit to save all people by any and all means. The great compassion is a spirit that prompts it to be ill with the illness of people and to suffer with their suffering." Unquote. Shakyamuni Buddha went on to say, "Your suffering is my suffering. Your happiness is my happiness. And just as a mother loves her child, he does not forget this spirit for even a single moment. For it is the nature of Buddhahood to be compassionate." Here we have two examples of perfect empathy of both Buddhahood and its use by Shakyamuni Buddha as an enlightened person. Number 2 reads, "Do not think that the compassion of Buddha is only for the present life. It is a manifestation of the timeless compassion of the eternal Buddha that has been operative since unknown times when man went astray due to ignorance." Unquote. This again refers to the existence of empathy in enlightenment as a part of its essence. Shakyamuni's empathy for us, even after having found the answer to all his questions about life, led him to teach the Buddha Dharma for the alleviation of suffering for all those who had come in and would come in to the world of samsara. So, as far as looking for examples of empathy and respect, we need not look any further than our own religious heroes and our teachers who strive to share their understanding with us. After 20 years of dedicated practice as a Tendai monk, Shinran Shonin, not finding himself any closer to the state of enlightenment than he was when he entered the clergy, did not give up. He could have, but he did not. Shinran became aware of the possibility of his own enlightenment through other power of the Buddha, Buddha-centered power, from his teacher, Honen Shonin. Shinran learned of Amida's wisdom compassion that embraces all beings. Like Shakyamuni, Shinran Shonin could have stopped there, having found his own answers, but neither he or Shakyamuni did so. They went on to teach others the path to Amida's pure land. Why did he do that? Honen Shonin left one of the centers of Japanese Buddhism of his time, Mount Hiei, to go into Kyoto to teach the common folk. Why would he have done such a thing? Renyo Shonin, having suffered persecution and threats to his life and limb, continued spreading the Nembutsu teachings to the common people of Japan, or anyone who wished to hear them, regardless of their status in life. Why did he strive so hard to share his Nembutsu teachings with them? The answer to all these questions is empathy and respect. Since they do not separate themselves from everyday folk, and despite any perceived status they may have had, they realized that the suffering they experienced was no different from anyone else's. Having found the wisdom and compassion that embraces all unconditionally, how could they not have shared that news with others? We may not be able to have the same level of empathy and respect that our religious heroes have, but that does not mean we should not try to share, to whatever degree we can, empathy and respect to others. Let me ask you a few things. Why are you becoming a priest? Why are you a member of a Sangha? Why do you try to follow the Jodo Shinshu teachings? The answer for that is Namo Amida Butsu. As we grow in confidence and understanding of what the Nembutsu represents, infinite wisdom and boundless compassion, the alleviation of suffering, the possibility of enlightenment, and so much more, we can come to realize that suffering is experienced by all human beings. This is the reason we should nurture empathy and respect for ourselves and to share with others. How do you think the people of Hawaii survived 2 tsunamis and numerous hurricanes and came back from those disasters? Yes, there were people who only thought of themselves, but more likely, it was the empathy and respect the people of Hawaii shared with each other that brought them back from those disasters. That is how powerful empathy and respect can be. And that is how we shall get past this current crisis. The most beautiful example of empathy and respect can be found in the translation of Kannon Bosatsu's name. Kannon, you'll remember, is known as Kuan Yin in Chinese. She was a goddess of compassion. When her name is translated, it means this: he or she who hears the cries of the world. Let me do that again. He or she who hears the cries of the world. This means that she forestalls her own enlightenment because she hears and empathizes with the suffering of those left in samsara. It is the sustaining of healthy sanghas and the nurturing of empathy and respect that are very important parts of what will sustain the Jodo Shinshu teachings and its temples through the years to come. I would like to thank the BSC and Reverend Kunyuki for this opportunity to speak with you today. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandavas Naman.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. But thank you very much, Reverend Kaufman, for that message. Are there any questions from the viewers? I guess I could start. I have a question. In Shinto Buddhism, of course, we can all build our own healthy sangha. We recite the Nembutsu, Namu Amida Butsu. In a more real world, the larger Hawaii community, our ohana or the sangha, the Hawaii sangha, or as you mentioned, friends and families. But how can we build that empathy, nurture that empathy and respect? I know, we can help. We can show our respect to the hospital workers and so on by thanking them and when we see them for all that they do. And but how do we build that nurturing and sharing of respect?
Well, what I see, Dennis, is what I've seen in the past. Being yourselves, living the Butsu teachings, I think that's attractive to people. I've seen people who have come to guest functions, been impressed by the Sangha. And we have got new members from that interaction. So I think it's trying your best to live the Nembutsu teachings and know that you're not alone in suffering, but we're all suffering. So we can be as helpful as we can within our own limitations. Now, the 3 karmas that we expend, talking, thinking, doing, we have to remember we do all those within our own limitations. Sometimes we're good talkers, or sometimes we might have a friend that has a problem. You never have to mention Buddhism, but if you use your Buddhist values to help a person solve this problem, that could be a good beginning. There's many ways to do it, but mostly it depends on yourself, being yourself.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Here's a question. What do I say to unvaccinated friends whose unvaccinated father is now in the ICU?
All you can do is support them at this point. We don't know the causes and conditions that lead a person to not take the vaccine. If a person has not taken the vaccine, there's nothing we can do about it. And certainly if a family member is stricken with the virus, all we can do is support that family to the best of our ability.
Great, thank you. What is the connection between Namo Amida Butsu and a healthy Sangha?
As Bishop mentioned in his talk, the Nembutsu can eventually transform us from being rough characters to being gentle and kind. It transforms us to the point where we don't want to do evil things. We don't want to hurt people. And when that happens, that's attractive to other people. You see people who are nice and kind, and that's an attraction. And that's what the Nembutsu helps to do. If you come to realize how precious it is, what it's promising.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Reverend Kaufman, you earlier mentioned that empathy, it was beyond sympathy. I think currently with the number of COVID cases and you hear about people being very ill, it's easy to feel, being angry, I guess, for those unvaccinated, but then you can also feel sympathy. But how do we convert that sympathy, I guess, to
Well,
empathy?
Possibly to, like I said, support the families who are stricken by it, but my feelings have been crazy about the people who haven't been vaccinated either. You have to understand that their conditions, the causes and conditions behind their decision are there. And that's what they're responding to. We can hope and that the causes and conditions may change in their life, so they may come to protect themselves, especially in the light of what's happening now. It's just a tragedy. This didn't have to happen. But people being what they are, it's natural, unfortunately.
Okay, here's a question. Many times we focus attention more on the physical Sangha and temple needs. So how do we balance the health of the physical Sangha and the temple needs with the spiritual health of the Sangha members?
Well, I think getting involved in community affairs, that can help, letting people know who we are, where we are. We have done what we can do to protect the Sangha. Like I say, we even have our limitations. So I've seen people think of new projects come up that will help both Sangha members and the greater community. And if we can keep on doing that, that can help.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Well, if not, that I guess that would conclude tonight's Dharmathon.
We have a couple of questions in the chat from our other moderators.
Oh, I addressed the one from Sharon O'Hara. Was there another one? And Lois?
Sorry, I misread. You're fine.
Okay. All right. So this concludes today's Dharmathon. Thank you all for attending this evening's session, and we hope you enjoyed them. If there are any further questions, please direct them to the Buddhist Study Center at kwong@honpahi.org, and your question will be forwarded to the minister. The email address again is kwong@honpahi.org. Please join us again for tomorrow's session with Reverend Sol Kalu and Reverend Satoshi Tomioka, beginning at 6:30 p.m. Hawaii time. Thank you, aloha, and good night.
Thank you, Dennis.